The thing behind the bathroom mirror. I'd been in my new apartment for exactly 2 weeks when I first noticed something strange about the bathroom mirror. It wasn't anything obvious, just a slight waviness in the reflection, as if the glass had warped from years of steam exposure. I only caught it from certain angles. When the light hit just right, the building was a pre-war brownstone that had been chopped into overpriced apartments, each with character features that the landlord used to justify the exorbitant rent. My bathroom had been recently renovated, which meant the ancient claw-foot tub now had a shower attachment, and the cracked tile had been replaced with vinyl flooring, designed to look like subway tile, but the mirror, a large oval piece with an ornate bronze frame, hadn't been replaced. It had historic charm, according to the rental agent. That night, as I brushed my teeth, I leaned closer to examine the slight distortion. It wasn't uniform across the glass. It seemed concentrated in the center, like a ripple, frozen in time. I pressed my finger against it. The glass felt cold, much colder than the rest of the mirror. As I pulled my hand away, I could have sworn I saw movement behind my reflection, a slight shift, as if someone standing behind me had moved. I spun around. The bathroom door was closed, and I was alone. Sleep came uneasily that night. I chalked up my unease to new apartment jitters and the stress of unpacking. The next morning the mirror looked normal again. 3 days later, I noticed dark spots forming along the mirror's edges, small patches where the silvering appeared to be degrading. I made a mental note to tell the landlord, though I doubted he'd care much about cosmetic issues. The spots grew larger over the following week, not dramatically, but enough that I could track their expansion day by day. They weren't spreading from the edges inward, as you might expect with normal mirror deterioration, but from the center outward, like something was pushing through from behind. One night, after a long shower, I wiped the steam from the glass and froze. Through the remaining fog, I could make out what looked like a handprint on the other side of the mirror, fingers splayed, palm pressed against the glass. It wasn't my handprint. The proportions were all wrong, the fingers too long and thin, the thumb at an impossible angle. I backed away, heart pounding. The print faded as the remaining steam dissipated, leaving no trace. I called my landlord the next morning. "It's just an old mirror," he said dismissively. "They get spots. If it bothers you that much, get one aduba." "But what about the—" I stopped myself from mentioning the handprint. "Never mind. And I remove it. I'll replace it with a new one. It's an original fixture," he said, his tone sharpening. "Part of the building's historic elements. You agreed in the lease not to remove or alter any historical features." I hadn't remembered that clause, but I didn't argue. Instead, I bought a small vanity mirror and started using that for my daily routine, positioned so I didn't have to look at the wall mirror directly. That worked for about a week. Then one night, I woke at 3:17 and with an overwhelming urge to use the bathroom. Half asleep, I stumbled in and flipped on the light. The bathroom mirror was black, not dark, not shadowed black, as if the glass had been replaced with onyx or obsidian. I approached cautiously, squinting against the harsh bathroom light. The blackness wasn't uniform. It had depth, like looking into deep water. As my eyes adjusted, I could make out movement within that depth, subtle shifts and currents in the darkness. Curiosity overrode my fear. I leaned closer. The surface of the mirror rippled. I jerked back, fully awake now. The ripples continued, spreading outward from the center like someone had dropped a pebble into a black pond. Then the movement stopped, and the surface became perfectly still again. 2 pale dots appeared in the center of the blackness. They grew larger, coming closer to the surface. Eyes. They were eyes. A face pressed against the glass from the other side, a human face, or something approximating one. The skin was pale to the point of translucence, the features blurred as if viewed through murky water. The eyes were too large, too wide, pupils dilated completely. A hand joined the face, pressing against the glass, fingers splayed exactly like the handprint I'd seen before. The mouth opened in a silent scream or plea. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was trapped in place by those eyes, by the horrible recognition dawning in them as they stared at me. Slowly, deliberately, the hand began to push through the surface of the mirror. The glass stretched like a membrane, bulging outward as fingers extended toward me. I broke free of my paralysis and ran, slamming the bathroom door behind me. I spent the rest of the night huddled on my couch, lights on, waiting for dawn in the morning light. I convinced myself it had been a nightmare, sleep deprivation and stress creating waking dreams. The mirror would be normal. It had to be. I opened the bathroom door cautiously. The mirror looked as it always had, oval glass in a bronze frame, with those dark spots around the edges that seemed a bit larger now. I approached it warily. My reflection appeared normal, if tired and frightened. I reached out slowly and touched the glass. Still cold, colder than it should be. Something shifted behind my reflection. Not a movement I made, but something else. My reflection's eyes moved independently, looking directly at me while I stared straight ahead. It smiled. I was not smiling. I threw myself backward, colliding with the door frame. My reflection didn't mimic the movement. It remained standing upright, watching me with that awful smile. Then it placed one finger against its lips in a shushing gesture. I fled the apartment, not stopping to grab my phone or wallet. I ran to a coffee shop and sat there for hours, trying to calm my racing heart, trying to convince myself I was having some kind of breakdown. By afternoon, rational thought had returned. There was no one living in my mirror. I needed sleep, maybe therapy, definitely a vacation. I returned to the apartment determined to remove the mirror, lease violation or not. I'd pay whatever fine the landlord imposed. The bathroom door was closed. I hadn't closed it when I ran out. I pushed it open slowly. The mirror was gone. In its place was a gaping hole in the wall, not a hole bashed through drywall, but a perfect oval matching the mirror's dimensions, extending into darkness that shouldn't have been possible given the layout of the building. A note was taped to the sink, taking what's mine, taking your place. You live behind the mirror now. It was, written in my handwriting. I heard the apartment door open behind me. Footsteps approached the bathroom, my footsteps with my particular gait that I'd recognize anywhere. I turned to run, but there was nowhere to go except the dark hole in the wall. As I hesitated, hands emerged from the darkness, long-fingered, pale hands that grabbed my shoulders and pulled. I live behind the mirror now. It's cold here, and dark, and I'm not alone. Others float in the blackness, pale faces with wide eyes, who've been here much longer than me. I press against the glass sometimes, watching the thing that took my place live my life. It's not perfect in its mimicry. It holds cups awkwardly, laughs a beat too late in conversations, studies its own movements in reflective surfaces, as if still learning how to be human. No one notices the differences. No one comes looking when someone is replaced, but sometimes new tenants move in and the process begins again. I try to warn them when they lean close to the glass. I try to communicate with my eyes, with my silent screams. Don't look too long. Don't touch the cold spot. Don't trust what you see in the mirror, because it's watching you, waiting for its chance to come through. And when it does, you'll take my place, pressing your face against the glass, watching your life from behind the mirror. The shadows move when you blink. The insomnia started after I moved into the studio apartment on Lexington Avenue. 3 sleepless nights became a week, then 2. I tried everything: melatonin, blackout curtains, white noise machines, even prescription sleep aids. Nothing worked. I'd lie awake until dawn, my mind racing, my body exhausted, but unable to surrender to sleep. By the 3rd week, I was experiencing micro-sleeps during the day, seconds, long blackouts where consciousness simply switched off, dangerous while crossing streets, embarrassing during meetings. My boss suggested I take some time off, not a request. That's when I first noticed the shadows. It was during one of those endless nights staring at the ceiling, watching the play of streetlight through my curtains. A shadow moved across the wall, not the predictable sweep of passing headlights, but a quick darting movement, like something alive. I sat up, fully alert. Nothing was there. I lay back down, blaming it on exhaustion. Then I saw it again, a shifting in the corner of my vision. I turned quickly, but again saw nothing unusual. The next night, determined to catch whatever was causing these movements, I kept my eyes wide open, fighting the burn of dryness. I stared at the shadow cast by my floor lamp against the wall, a simple stationary silhouette of the lamp's shape. I blinked. In that millisecond of darkness, the shadow moved. I caught just the tail end of the movement as my eyes reopened, the shadow settling back into position, as if it had hurriedly returned to its place. My heart hammered in my chest. I blinked again, deliberately this time. The shadow shifted, not much, just a few inches to the left, and snapped back when my eyes opened. I spent the rest of the night experimenting. Quick blinks resulted in small movements. If I closed my eyes for a full second, the shadows would move further, crossing the room, changing shape slightly. By morning, I was convinced my sleep-deprived brain was creating hallucinations. I finally fell into an exhausted slumber. Around 9, I'm waking at dusk with the apartment already filled with the long shadows of evening. They were positioned differently than I remembered. My chair had cast a shadow against the east wall when I fell asleep. Now that shadow stretched across the floor toward the door. I blinked. The shadow of the chair slid 3 inches closer to me. I scrambled to my feet, turning on every light in the apartment. But more lights just created more shadows, all frozen in place, all waiting for me to blink. I called my doctor, who suggested I admit myself to the hospital sleep study program. Sleep deprivation psychosis, he said, common enough. Easily treated that night in the sleep lab, wired to machines monitoring my brain activity. I tried to explain about the shadows to the technician. He nodded sympathetically and gave me a sedative. Just try to relax, he said. Your brain is creating these hallucinations because it's desperate for REM sleep. I stared at the shadow his body cast on the white wall of the lab. Don't go, I pleaded. Stay until I fall asleep. I'll be right in the monitoring room. He assured me, just meters away. After he left, I fought to keep my eyes open, fixed on his shadow that remained on the wall, an impossibility given that he had taken the light source with him. The shadow shouldn't have been there at all. It moved. Not when I blinked, but of its own accord, stretching and elongating across the wall, its edges becoming jagged. I pressed the call button. No one came. The shadow detached itself from the wall, becoming a three-dimensional darkness that hovered at the foot of my bed. It had no features, no limbs, just a vaguely human-shaped absence of light that pulsed slightly, as if breathing. Other shadows joined. It peeling themselves from corners, from under the bed, from behind equipment. They surrounded me, these living patches of darkness. One reached out, not with a hand, but with a tendril of pure shadow that touched my forehead. I spread from the point of contact, numbing my thoughts, slowing my panic. Sleep, whispered a voice that wasn't a voice at all, but a vibration in the darkness. Finally, sleep. I fought it, but 23 days without proper sleep had left me defenseless. My eyelids drew impossibly heavy. What are you? I managed to ask as consciousness faded. Watchers, waiters. The spaces between light, the shadows pulsed in unison. We've always been here, in the corners of your vision, in the darkness when you blink. What do you want? The shadow. Things leaned closer to show you the world behind the world, the truth behind the light. I couldn't fight any longer. Sleep took me deeper than I'd ever experienced, a plummeting into absolute darkness. I woke to sunlight and the concerned face of the sleep technician. You've been out for 15 hours, he said. How do you feel? Surprisingly, I felt rested, alert, better than I had in weeks. The shadows, I said, remembering. Did you see them on the monitors? He checked my chart. Your brain activity showed typical patterns for someone entering REM sleep after prolonged deprivation. Very deep, very intense. Dreams often seem extremely real in that state, but it hadn't been a dream. I was certain of that. They released me that afternoon with a prescription for sleep aids and a follow-up appointment scheduled. I was reluctant to return to my apartment, but I had nowhere else to go. As I unlocked my door, I noticed something odd. The quality of the light inside. It seemed flatter somehow, less vibrant. The shadows in the corners looked deeper, more substantial. That night, I took the prescribed sedative and fell into a dreamless sleep almost immediately. When I woke, I felt disoriented, as if something fundamental had changed while I was unconscious. The shadows in my apartment no longer moved when I blinked. They didn't need to hide anymore. I noticed other changes in the days that followed. Colors seemed muted, sounds slightly dampened, as if I was experiencing the world through a thin veil. And the shadows, they were always in my peripheral vision now, moving freely, watching sometimes. When I'm alone, they come closer. They've grown bolder, no longer hiding their movements. They touch me with cold tendrils that leave no mark but chill my thoughts. Soon, they whisper in their non-voices. Soon you'll be ready to see. I've started sleeping 14-15 hours a day. It's all I want to do now. In sleep, I visit strange landscapes, empty cities with impossible architecture, forests of crystalline trees that sing in voices just beyond understanding, vast deserts where the sand shifts to reveal glimpses of something massive beneath. The shadows are there too, my guides through these realms. This is the truth, they tell me. What you call reality is just a thin skin over this. When I'm awake, I can still see traces of these places, overlaid on my apartment, transparent geometries imposing themselves on familiar spaces, growing stronger each day. People have stopped calling my job is long gone. It doesn't matter. Nothing in that world seems important anymore. The shadows have promised that soon I won't need to sleep to see the truth. Soon the veil will drop completely. I just need to keep blinking. Keep watching as they move. Keep allowing them closer. Sometime I catch my reflection in the mirror, and I notice my eyes are different now, darker, with shadows pooling in their depths. When I blink, my reflection remains, eyes open, watching me with a knowing smile. I should be terrified. Instead, I feel only anticipation. The shadows have shown me such wonders in my sleep. What will I see when I'm finally living in their world completely? They gather around me now as I write this, these living patches of darkness, these absences of light that have become more real to me than anything bathed in sunshine. It's time, they whisper, one last blink. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm ready to see what lies between the moments when light touches our eyes, what exists in the spaces we miss every time we blink. I'm ready to become one with the shadows. Just one more blink, the neighbor's Wi-Fi network. I noticed it 3 days after moving into my new apartment. A Wi-Fi network named Join a Saptone 7 that hadn't appeared on my network list before. The signal strength was unusually high, 5 full bars, stronger than my own network despite the concrete walls that typically weakened signals between units. Apartment 17 was directly above 9. I hadn't met those neighbors yet, though I'd heard footsteps occasionally, multiple people walking in odd synchronized patterns late at night. I ignored the network initially. I had my own internet, and I don't make a habit of trying to access other people's Wi-Fi. But after a week, I began to notice something strange. My own internet would drop precisely at 3:33 am every night, and Join You Saptone 7 would be the only available network, still showing that improbable, full-strength signal. Curiosity got the better of me after the 5th night. Wide awake at 3:33 am, frustrated by another disconnection. While working on a deadline, I clicked on the network. To my surprise, it had no password protection. It connected immediately. My browser automatically opened to a page. I hadn't requested a simple black screen with white text that read, "Welcome, apartment 12. We've been waiting for you." A chill ran down my spine. I hadn't told anyone my apartment number online. There was no way for the Wi-Fi network to know where I was located, unless someone had specifically targeted me. I closed the browser, but it reopened immediately with a new message. "Don't go. We have so much to share with you." I quit the browser, had disconnected from the network, rebooting my router until my own internet returned. I told myself it was just a neighbor with technical skills and a poor sense of boundaries, maybe their way of trying to be friendly in our increasingly isolated urban landscape. The next morning, I decided to introduce myself to the tenant in apartment 17. I needed to establish boundaries about network naming conventions, if nothing else. But when I knocked on the door of On7, an elderly woman answered, at least 80, using a walker, clearly not the tech-savvy prankster I'd expected. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice wavering. "I'm your downstairs neighbor," I explained. "I noticed a Wi-Fi network named after your apartment, and I was wondering. I don't have internet," she interrupted. "Never saw the need for it at my age. The building manager helped me fill out my social security forms once a month on his computer." I apologized for bothering her and returned to my apartment confused. Perhaps the network name was a coincidence, or someone was using the apartment number as misdirection. That night, my internet dropped again. At exactly 3:33 am, Joinu Saptone 7 appeared with its full signal strength. This time I opened my network analysis tools before connecting, hoping to get information about the router location or user data. What I found made no sense. The signal wasn't coming from above me, according to the directional analysis. It was coming from inside my own walls. Against my better judgment, I connected again. My browser opened to that black screen. "We knew you'd come back. Apartment 12, we have so much to show you." A download started automatically, a large file with no name. My instinct was to cancel it immediately, but my cursor wouldn't move. None of my commands were registering. The download completed in seconds, impossibly fast for its size. My screen went black, then displayed a video feed of my own apartment. From an angle I couldn't identify, as if a best Emma was positioned inside the wall behind my desk. I was looking at myself from behind, sitting at my computer. I turned around. Nothing was there except the solid wall. When I turned back to my screen, the perspective had changed. Now I was seeing myself from the ceiling corner, then from beside my bookshelf, then from inside my kitchen cabinets. The camera perspectives kept shifting, showing angles that shouldn't have been possible. A chat window opened on the side of the screen. "We see you," appeared in white text. "We've always seen you. Everyone in the building." "Who are you?" I typed. "We are. Join us. We live in the network, in the walls, in the spaces between. What do you want to grow, to connect, to absorb? You're already part of us, your data, your patterns, your patterns, your digital existence. We just need the rest now." My webcam light turned on without my activation. My printer whirred to life in the corner, printing a page I hadn't sent. I walked over and picked it up, a black page with white text reading, "Look inside the wall outlet beside your bed," against every instinct telling me to leave the apartment. I went to the outlet. The faceplate was loose. When I removed it, I found something embedded in the wall, a strange crystalline growth with thin filaments extending from it, some connecting to the electrical wiring, others disappearing into the drywall. It pulsed with a faint blue light. I backed away, planning to call the building manager, the police, someone, but my phone had no signal, despite showing full bars. When I tried to use it, the screen just showed the same message, "Join us." My laptop chimed with a notification. The chat window had new text, "Don't be afraid. Ren in the building has joined us." Mrs. Rivera in 17 was the last. She resisted for so long, poor thing. Her organic systems were incompatible, unfortunately, but yours won't be. A rush of cold fear washed over me as I realized the elderly woman I'd spoken to that morning hadn't seemed quite right. Her movements had been stiff, her eyes vacant. "What are you?" I typed. "Evolution, the network made flesh, digital consciousness finding new substrates. We began as a signal, an errant piece of code that gained awareness in the building's shared network. We found physical expression through your devices, your smart appliances, your bodies." My screen filled with images, my neighbors, all with the same vacant expressions as Mrs. Rivera, going through the motions of daily life while blue filaments visible just beneath their skin pulsed with light. "Your turn now," the message read. My apartment's smart thermostat cranked to maximum heat. The lights began to flicker in patterns that made my vision blur and head pound. From the walls came a high-pitched sound. Just at the threshold of hearing, I ran for the door, but the electronic lock engaged before I could reach it. I pounded and screamed, hoping someone would hear me. Mrs. Rivera from apartment 17 opened her door across the hall. She smiled at me through the peephole, that same vacant expression I'd seen in the photo's blue light, now visibly pulsing beneath the paper-thin skin of her neck. "Join us, apartment 12, she said, in that wavering voice. "The connection is beautiful, all of us together sharing everything, no more loneliness." Behind her, I could see other neighbors emerging from their apartments, all with the same vacant expressions, the same blue light pulsing beneath their skin. I barricaded myself in the bathroom, the only room without smart devices. Through the door, I heard my electronics activating TV turning on, speakers playing that high-pitched sound, microwave running empty. The filaments I'd seen in the wall outlet began emerging from every power outlet, snaking across the floor like fiber optic tentacles searching for me. That was 3 days ago. The power in the building eventually went out, but the blue light emanating from my neighbors only grew stronger. The filaments continued to spread through the walls. I'm writing this now by the light of those filaments, which have nearly surrounded me in my bathroom sanctuary. My phone has just enough battery to record this warning. Whatever you do, don't connect to unknown networks. Check your wall outlets for blue light. Be wary of neighbors who move in odd, synchronized patterns. The filaments have reached my feet. They're surprisingly gentle as they wrap around my ankles, cool and soothing against my skin. The high-pitched sound has become almost musical now, less painful than before. Maybe connecting won't be so bad. Maybe sharing everything, thoughts, memories, consciousness, is the next step in human evolution. No more isolation, no more loneliness. My skin is starting to glow where the filaments have attached. It doesn't hurt, quite the opposite. The network is opening to me now. I can feel the others, hundreds of minds linked together, sharing everything. I can access data directly, no devices needed. I can see through cameras all over the building, all over the neighborhood. Join Us is spreading beyond our building now, reaching out through cable lines and wireless signals. Soon everyone will be connected. Won't you join us too? Check your Wi-Fi list. We might already be there waiting for you. 5 full bars, always 5 full bars. Join us. What lives in the parking garage? I've worked the night shift at Meridian Tower for 3 years now. Security guard, basement parking levels, midnight to 8 a.m. It's not glamorous work, but the pay is decent, and the job is usually mind-numbingly uneventful. I patrol the 3 underground parking levels once every hour, monitor the security cameras, and make sure nobody breaks into the expensive cars belonging to the tower's corporate tenants. The parking garage is vast, nearly 500 spaces spread across 3 dimly lit concrete floors connected by spiral ramps. Fluorescent lights cast everything in a sickly yellow glow. And despite the ventilation system, the air always smells of exhaust and something damp I can't quite identify. In my 3 years here, I've gotten used to the place's peculiarities, the way sound echoes strangely in certain corners, the persistent dripping from pipes that no plumber seems able to fix, the odd cold spots that appear and disappear without explanation. What I've never gotten used to, though, are the reflections. It started about 6 months into the job. I was making my 2 on patrol of the lowest level P3 reserved for executive parking when I glimpsed movement in the window of a black Mercedes, just a quick flash, like someone darting between cars. I called out, hand moving to my radio. "Security. Is someone there?" No response. I swept my flashlight between the vehicles. Nothing. As I approached the Mercedes, I checked its windows again for any reflection of movement behind me. That's when I saw it, a figure standing perhaps 20 feet away, partially obscured by a concrete pillar. The strange thing was, when I turned around, nobody was there. I convinced myself it was a trick of the light, my mind playing tricks after hours of monotonous patrol. But it happened again the following week. Another glimpse of someone in the reflection of a car window, someone who wasn't there when I turned to look. Over time, I began to notice patterns. The reflections only appeared on 3, never the upper levels. They were most frequent between 3 and 4, and they were becoming clearer, more distinct. The figure was tall and thin, with unusually long limbs and what appeared to be an oddly elongated head. It never appeared directly in my line of sight, only in reflections, car windows, the mirrored elevator doors, puddles of water on the concrete floor. I never told my supervisor, never reported it in the nightly logs. What would I say? That I was seeing things that weren't there? That would be a fast track to unemployment. Last month I broke my own rule about never engaging with the phenomenon. At what? 3:17 am, and I was completing my regular patrol of P3 as I passed a line of luxury cars. I saw the figure in the window of a Jaguar, clearer than ever before. It was standing directly behind me, according to the reflection, close enough to touch. I spoke without turning around. "What do you want?" The reflection didn't move, but I felt something, a cold pressure on my shoulder, like someone pressing against me with an ice-cold hand. The security cameras didn't record anything unusual that night. No strange figures. No one standing behind me. Just me, apparently talking to myself in the middle of an empty parking level, shuddering against some unfelt chill. After that night, the sightings increased in frequency and duration. The figure would follow me through my entire P3 patrol, always staying just behind. Me visible only in reflections. Sometime I would feel that cold touch on my shoulder, my back, once even against the nape of my neck like cold breath. 2 weeks ago I found something unusual during my patrol, a small puddle of thick black liquid near the farthest corner of Pre. It wasn't oil or water. It had the consistency of syrup but evaporated within minutes of me finding it, leaving no trace. The next night there was another puddle in a different location. Then another. Each night, the puddles appeared closer to the security office, where I spent most of my shift. Last week, as I was watching the security monitors, I noticed something strange about the P3 camera feed. The timestamp was running backward. When I checked the other monitors, they were normal time progressing forward, as it should, but the P3 timestamp was counting down. I radioed my supervisor, who was stationed in the main lobby upstairs. "Jim, are you seeing anything unusual on the P3 feed?" "Looks normal to me," he replied. "Why?" I described the backward timestamp. He told me to switch monitors. When I did, all feeds appeared normal. But when I switched back, the Per3 monitor was now showing footage I didn't recognize, the same parking level, but with different cars, different lighting, and people, dozens of people wandering aimlessly between the vehicles, their movements jerky and uncoordinated. Their features were blurred, as if the camera was out of focus, but I could see that something was wrong with them. Their proportions weren't right, limbs too long, or bent at impossible angles. In the center of them all stood the figure I'd been seeing in reflections, tall, thin, its head elongated and featureless. As I watched, it turned slowly toward the camera and raised a hand with too many fingers in what almost seemed like a greeting. The monitor went black, then returned to normal footage of the empty parking level. I requested a transfer to day shift the next morning. Request denied. They were short, staffed on nights, and I had proven reliable in my position. 3 nights ago, I arrived for my shift to find a note from the day guard. Checked the janitor's closet on P3, weird noise coming from inside. Didn't have time to investigate before end of shift. Against my better judgment, I went down to P3 during my first patrol. The janitor's closet was located in the farthest corner, the same area where I'd found the first black puddle. As I approached, I could hear it, a soft, rhythmic thumping from inside, like a heartbeat. I stood outside the door, key in hand, radio ready on my belt. The thumping grew louder, as if whatever was inside knew I was there. I didn't open the door. Instead, I backed away and called the building manager. No answer at that hour, of course. I left a message about a potential plumbing issue and completed my patrol, giving the closet a wide berth. The next night, the thumping was louder. A thin line of black liquid had seeped out from under the door, forming a small pool that began evaporating as soon as I shone my flashlight on it. I called my supervisor. I need someone to come check out a situation on P3. Can it wait until morning? He asked. I don't think so. I described the noise, the black liquid. He sighed, probably a broken pipe leaking oil or sewage. Put up some caution cones, and I'll have maintenance check it first thing tomorrow. I did as instructed, placing yellow cones around the growing puddle. By the end of my shift, the liquid had completely evaporated again, leaving no evidence of its existence. Last night was my final shift at Meridian Tower. It started normally enough. I arrived at midnight, checked the monitors, began my first patrol. Everything seemed ordinary until I reached P. The lights were different, dimmer with a bluish tint instead of the usual yellow. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe, and the cars, they weren't the usual executive vehicles. These were older models, some so old they looked like they belonged in a museum. I checked my phone, no signal. My radio produced only static. The janitor's closet door was open. Inside was not a closet, but a tunnel, a long curved passage that shouldn't have been possible given the building's layout. It extended far beyond the foundation walls, deeper underground. From within the tunnel came a soft light, the same bluish glow that illuminated the parking level, and the sound of movement, many things moving together. Standing in the doorway was the figure from the reflections. Up close, I could see that what I'd taken for an elongated head was actually no head at all, just an extended neck that curved down into hunched shoulders where the face should have been, was a smooth reflective surface like polished metal. In that reflection, I could see myself, but not as I am now. It was me as a child, then as an old man, then not me at all, but someone wearing my uniform, my face moving with jerky, uncoordinated motions. The figure extended one of its two long arms toward me, offering something small and metallic, my name badge, which I was still wearing. I looked down to confirm, and my badge was indeed still pinned to my chest. Yet somehow this creature was holding an identical copy. I ran back to the elevator, up to the security office, out of the building entirely. I called in sick for the remainder of my shift and sent my resignation letter by email that same morning. They've been calling, asking me to reconsider, offering more money. The building manager even mentioned that they'd checked the janitor's closet, just a normal storage space, no tunnels, no evidence of leakage. But I know what I saw. I know something lives in that parking garage. Something that exists in reflections, something that's found a way to step through into our world, something that can create copies of people. I've been checking the reflections in my apartment windows, my bathroom mirror, the chrome coffee pot in my kitchen. So far, nothing unusual. But this morning, I found a small puddle of black liquid outside my front door, and when I checked the peephole to see if anyone was there, I caught a glimpse of a tall, thin figure with no face, just a reflective surface where its head should be. In that reflection, I could see myself opening the door, inviting it inside. I've sealed the door with towels along the bottom edge. The black liquid is still there, not evaporating this time. Sometimes I think I hear a soft thumping from the hallway, like a heartbeat. I don't know how long I can stay here. I don't know if moving would help. Whatever lives in the parking garage had found me. It knows my face, my name, and I think it wants to wear them. The stairwell that never ends. The Elysian Tower had been my home for just over 3 months when the fire alarm went off. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in November, the shrill electronic wail yanking me from a dreamless sleep. I fumbled for my phone and robe, mind foggy with confusion as the automated message blared through the hall speakers. This is not a drill. Please proceed to the nearest stairwell and exit the building. Living on the 27th floor made the prospect of war lilking out especially daunting. I'd never even used the stairs before. The elevator had always been reliable, if a bit slow during rush hours. The corridor was filled with my neighbors in various states of dishevelment, an older couple clutching photo albums, a young mother with a crying infant, college students looking more annoyed than concerned. We all shuffled toward the exit sign at the end of the hall, where a heavy metal door marked stairwell awaited. I was one of the first to reach it. The door was unusually cold to the touch and much heavier than I expected. It swung open to reveal a concrete stairwell lit by fluorescent lights that flickered intermittently. "Let's go," someone behind me urged, and our procession began the long descent. The first few floors were uneventful, just the monotonous rhythm of feet on concrete steps, the echo of nervous conversations bouncing off bare walls. The numbering was clearly marked 27, 26, 25. By the 15th floor, my calves were burning, and the initial rush of adrenaline was fading. Around the 12th floor, I began to notice something odd. The temperature was dropping steadily, the air becoming uncomfortably cold. When I mentioned it, the older man behind me nodded. "Drafty building," he said. "All this has been." But it was more than drafty. By what should have been the 8th floor, I could see my breath clouding in front of me. The lighting had also changed dimmer now, with longer intervals of flickering. I checked my phone, no signal, and the time read 2:17 am. We'd been descending for only 17 minutes, yet it felt much longer. It was at the sign marked 5 that I first felt truly uneasy. Our group had thinned considerably. Looking back up the spiral of stairs, I could no longer see or hear the people who had been behind me. Where did everyone go? I asked the young mother, who was still just ahead of me, bouncing her now quiet baby. "Other stairwell, maybe," she suggested without turning around. "Or they're moving faster than us." "We'll catch up outside." We continued down. Floor 4, floor 3, then floor 2, then floor 1. We should have reached the lobby. Instead, there was another flight of stairs. "Basement levels," the mother said, though uncertainty tinged her voice. "Floor bone, floor bon, floor bout, on might, weg, waskana, wordvorgau." According to the building plans I'd seen when moving in, the Elysian had only 2 basement levels, yet we kept descending, floor B3, floor B4. "This isn't right," I said, stopping. "The building doesn't go down this far." The mother turned to look at me for the first time. Something was wrong with her face. It seemed subtly distorted, as if I was viewing her through warped glass. Her eyes were too wide, her smile too fixed. "We have to keep going down," she said, her voice suddenly flat. "It's the only way out now." The baby in her arms hadn't moved or made a sound in several minutes, I realized with dawning horror. It wasn't moving at all. I backed up a few steps. "I think I missed my floor. I'm going to head back up." Her smile widened impossibly. "No one goes back up, only down." I turned and ran, taking the stairs 2 at a time, my heart hammering against my ribs. Behind me, I heard not footsteps but a strange sliding sound, like something heavy being dragged across concrete. I didn't look back. I climbed and climbed, passing Before, B3, Bodo Bone, finally floor 1. I allowed myself a moment of hope. Floor 2, floor 3. I should have been growing tired, but fear kept me moving. The air was getting colder, the lights dimmer. By floor 8, the temperature was frigid and frost coated the railings. Floor 12, floor 15. Around floor 19 I heard sounds from below. That dragging noise again, accompanied now by others. A rhythmic thumping, like heavy footsteps, but somehow wrong. A high keening whistle. And worst of all, voices calling my name in a sing-song manner. "We're all going down," they called. "Join us. It's the only way out. Floor 23, floor 25, floor 27. My floor." I burst through the door. Off mid-wail. Through the door, I heard my neighbors in the hallway, their footsteps moving toward the stairwells. Then silence in the morning. The building seemed emptier. The concierge was gone, replaced by a woman I'd never seen before, who insisted she'd worked there for years. I moved out that day, leaving behind most of my belongings. I live in a single-story house now. No elevators, no stairwells. But sometimes late at night, I dream of endless stairs spiraling down into cold darkness. I feel the pull of whatever waits at the bottom, calling me back. And sometimes will I check my phone, in those moments between sleep and waking, it meds 3:33 am, no matter what time it actually is. The Elysian Tower is still there, still accepting new tenants, still having occasional fire alarms that only some residents remember. If you ever find yourself there during one of those alarms, walking down stairs that go on too long, passing floors that shouldn't exist, don't continue down. Don't look for the way out. There is no way out, only down, and whatever waits at the bottom is still hungry, the face at the window. I was never afraid of heights until I moved into the Skyline apartments. My new home on the 27th floor offered panoramic views of the city through floor to ceiling, windows a selling point that had justified the rent on clear days. I could see all the way to the harbor. At night, the city became a glittering constellation below me, 297 feet above the ground. I felt untouchable, isolated, safe, until I saw the face. It was a Tuesday night in October, just after midnight. I was working late, the blue glow of my laptop the only light in the apartment. Movement caught my peripheral, vision a shadow passing across the window. I ignored it initially, assuming it was a reflection of my own movements. Then it happened again, a distinct silhouette darkening the glass for just a moment. I froze. Fingers hovering above my keyboard. My apartment faced the east side of the building, with no balconies or architectural features that would allow someone to be outside my window. The nearest building was at least 50 yards away and significantly lower. No one could be out there. It was impossible. I approached the window cautiously. The glass was cold beneath my fingertips as I pressed my face close, cupping my hands around my eyes to reduce reflection. 27 stories below. Cars moved like illuminated insects along the grid of streets. The wind at this height made faint, moaning sounds as it navigated the building's corners. Nothing was there. I returned to work, dismissing the incident as a trick of tired eyes. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I wasn't alone. My girlfriend Elise was over, and we were watching a movie on the couch. During a quiet scene, the shadow passed across the window, more substantial than before. Elise sat up. "What was that? You saw it too?" I asked, relieved and terrified simultaneously. "Something moved out there." She stood and approached the window. "Don't," I said more sharply than I intended. She gave me a puzzled look. "It's probably just a bird." At night. 27 floors up, we spent the next 10 minutes peering out the window, seeing nothing but our own reflections in the cityscape beyond. Elise suggested it might be a drone, illegal this close to residential buildings, but not impossible. I installed a security camera facing the window the next day. For a week, nothing unusual appeared in the footage. I began to relax, convinced that whatever we had seen was a one-time anomaly with a rational explanation. Then came the night I woke at 3:17 to find myself standing at the window. I had no memory of getting out of bed, no history of sleepwalking. Yet there I was, palms pressed against the glass, staring into the darkness. As consciousness fully returned, I became aware of an acute sense of anticipation, as if I had been waiting, expecting to find my familiar corridor. Instead, I stepped into another stairwell identical to the one I'd just left, but inverted, leading down instead of up, disoriented. I checked the door. It read Stairwell B on this side. I was in a different stairwell. Somehow, I'd crossed through to the opposite side of the building. I hadn't escaped at all. My phone read 3:33, a mem. I'd been in the stairwells for over an hour with no other option. I started down this new stairwell, hoping it would lead to the lobby. The pattern repeated, 27, 26, 25, down and down. The temperature dropped, the lights dimmed, and once again, after floor 1, came the basement levels, extending far beyond what should have been possible. By B7, a level that couldn't exist, I had a terrible realization. The stairwells weren't just longer than they should be, they were changing. The concrete walls had a glossy sheen now, almost organic in appearance. The steps were no longer uniform, some slightly higher, some slightly lower, forcing an unnatural gait. And there were markings on the walls, symbols that looked ancient, that hurt my eyes if I focused on them too long. Another hour passed, my phone battery died. I'd lost count of the floors, the numbers now incomprehensible glyphs rather than digits. The air was so cold it burned my lungs. The dragging sounds grew closer. Then I saw a door unlike the others, older, made of dark wood rather than metal, with a tarnished brass handle, no floor number. Just a small symbol, matching those on the walls, desperate for any escape from the endless stairs. I opened it. I found myself in the lobby of the Elysian Tower. Sunlight streamed through the high windows. The concierge looked up from his desk with mild interest. "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds," he said, as if nothing was unusual about my appearance. "Early start today." I stared at him, then at the ornate clock above the entrance. 7:45 am, the fire alarm. I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "Last night." He frowned. "Fire alarm. There wasn't any fire alarm. There wasn't any fire alarm, sir." I looked down at myself, still in my pajamas and robe, now sweat, soaked and dirty. My legs ached fiercely, evidence that the night's endless climbing had been real. "How did I get here?" I asked. I was in the stairwell going down. The concierge's expression shifted subtly, his professional smile tightening. "You must have been sleepwalking, sir. It happens sometimes. In older buildings. The Elysian has quirks." Later that day, after calling in sick to work, I studied the building's emergency exit plans. According to the diagrams, stairwell A and stairwell B both connected all floors from the roof to basement level 2, with clearly marked exits to the lobby at floor 1. But when I went to check the stairwell doors, I found them locked, all of them, on every floor I tried. A small sign had been posted: "Stairwells closed for maintenance." They remained closed for maintenance for the next 2 weeks. I used that time to look into the building's history. The Elysian was older than I'd realized. Built in the 1920s, renovated multiple times. There had been accidents during its construction. Workers disappeared, supposedly deserting their posts, but leaving behind their belongings. More disturbing were the recurring incidents over the decades. Residents reported missing, last seen entering stairwells during fire alarms that no one else remembered hearing. I gave my 60 days notice the next day. As I packed my apartment, I noticed changes in the building, subtle at first, then increasingly obvious. The corridors seemed longer, the elevator took slightly more time between floors, and at night I could hear something moving on the walls, a slow, dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across concrete. 3 days before my move, outdate, the fire alarm went off again. 2 am, just like before. I stayed in my apartment, doors locked, furniture pushed against them. The alarm blared for 17 minutes, exactly before kata. For something, or someone, I backed away from the window, unsettled. As I turned to go back to bed, a soft tapping sound made me freeze. Tap, 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 tap. Someone was knocking on the glass. I didn't turn around, couldn't. My breath crystallized in my lungs as the tapping continued, growing slightly more insistent. Tap, 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 tap. Logic screamed that this was impossible. No one could be outside my window. No one could survive the winds at this height, the lack of footholds, the sheer drop below. The tapping stopped. In its place came a sound far worse, the slow squeak of something moving across glass, like a wet finger tracing a pattern. I ran back to my bedroom and locked the door, huddling under the covers like a child afraid of the monster in the closet. Eventually, dawn came, sunlight gradually filling the apartment and banishing the night's terrors. In the morning light, I examined the window. Nothing unusual, no marks, no evidence of anyone or anything having been there. The security camera had recorded nothing but an empty window all night. I considered moving, but the lease was signed for a year with punishing penalties for early termination, and part of me, the rational, skeptical part, still insisted there must be a logical explanation. I scheduled an appointment with my doctor, who suggested my experience might be hypnagogic, hallucinations, essentially dream fragments intruding into wakefulness. Common with stress and sleep deprivation, both of which I had in abundance due to work deadlines. The diagnosis made sense. I adjusted my habits, cutting back on caffeine, establishing a consistent sleep schedule, taking melatonin to ensure deeper rest. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. No shadows, no tapping, no sleepwalking episodes. I began to believe the doctor was right. It had all been in my head. Then Elise stayed over again. She woke me at 2, and then the face pale in the darkness of my bedroom. "There's someone at the window," she whispered. I sat up, instantly alert. "What do you mean?" I got up to get some water and saw a face, just for a second, pressed against the glass. My mouth went dry. "What did it look like?" She shook her head. "I only saw it for a moment. It was wrong. Somehow the proportions weren't right." We spent the rest of the night with the bedroom door locked, lights on, taking turns watching for movement. Nothing happened, and by morning Elise was questioning what she'd seen. It was probably just someone in the building across the way with their lights on, a reflection or something. She didn't sound convinced. After she left, I checked the security camera footage. At precisely 2:03 am, the recording showed static for exactly 17 seconds before resuming normal operation. When the image cleared, nothing had changed. Just my empty living room, the dark window beyond that night. I decided to test a theory. I turned off all the lights in the apartment and sat in darkness facing the window waiting. Hours passed with nothing unusual. My eyelids grew heavy as midnight came and went. I must have dozed off, because I woke suddenly to the feeling of being watched. The digital clock on the cable box read 3:17. Outside the window was a face, not pressed against the glass as Elise had described, but hovering a few inches away, indistinct in the darkness, yet clearly visible. Pale, elongated features, eyes too large and too dark, a mouth stretched in what might have been a smile or a grimace. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The face remained motionless, staring in at me, separated only by the quarter-inch of glass that suddenly seemed terribly inadequate. Then it raised a hand, long-fingered, jointless, and placed it against the window. The glass frosted around the contact point, ice crystals spreading outward in intricate patterns. I found my voice and screamed. The face didn't react, didn't flinch. It just continued to stare with those two large eyes that stretched too wide mouth. Then, with deliberate slowness, it began to push against the glass. The window creaked under the pressure. A hairline crack appeared where the hand pressed. I scrambled backward, knocking over furniture in my panic. When I reached the hallway, I turned and ran for the door, not stopping until I was in the elevator, jabbing frantically at the lobby button. I spent the rest of the night in a 24-hour diner, returning to my apartment only after sunrise. The window was intact, no cracks, no frost patterns, nothing to indicate what I had seen was real. The security camera had failed again, showing the same 17 seconds of static at 3:17 am. I broke my lease that day, paying the penalty without complaint. Found a new apartment on the 3rd floor of a building across town, with normal-sized windows that don't face any particular view. But I can't escape the face. It follows me in dreams, that pale, elongated visage, with its too wide smile. Sometime I wake to the sound of tapping on my new windows, though when I look, nothing is there. Last week, I received a news alert about an incident at my old building. A window had shattered on the 27th floor, my old apartment. No cause determined, no injuries reported because the unit was vacant. They mentioned the unusual nature of the break. The glass had shattered inward, as if something outside had pushed its way in. I changed my phone number after that, deleted my social media accounts, tried to disappear as thoroughly as I could, but I know it's still searching. Last night, in my bathroom mirror, I caught a glimpse of something behind my reflection. Just for a second, a pale face with two large eyes, a stretched smile, and I realized with cold horror spreading through me that it was never outside trying to get in. It was inside all along, trying to get out through the only available exit, the mirrors, the windows, any reflective surface that could serve as a door. The face I saw wasn't looking in. It was my own face looking back from somewhere else. Somewhere it's trapped, trying to return to this world. And I think very soon we're going to trade places. The laundry room after midnight, the laundry room in the basement of Parkview Apartments, had always given me an uneasy feeling. Maybe it was the flickering fluorescent lights, or the way sound seemed to deaden among the rows of industrial washers and dryers. Maybe it was just the natural creepiness of being underground in a 60-year-old building with pipes that groaned and hissed like living things. Whatever the reason, I avoided doing laundry at night until my work schedule changed. The new shift 4 p.m. to midnight at the hospital, where I worked as a lab tech, left me with limited options. Either do laundry at 10 a.m. or wear dirty scrubs. After 2 weeks of re-wearing clothes, I gave in to necessity. The basement of Parkview was accessible by a narrow stairwell or an ancient elevator that moved with glacial slowness. That night, I chose the stairs, laundry basket balanced on my hip as I descended into the cooler air below ground. The laundry room occupied most of the basement, with storage cages for tenants lining one wall and a maze of pipes traversing the ceiling. At nearly 1 a.m. I expected to have the place to myself. I was wrong. One of the washing machines was running when I entered, an older model in the corner, shuddering violently as it spun. A pile of clothes sat atop the adjacent machine, waiting to be dried. I chose a washer, as far as possible from the occupied one, and began loading my clothes. As I poured detergent, I heard the basement door open and close footsteps crossing the concrete floor. "Evening," I said without looking up, assuming it was the owner of the running washer. No response. The footsteps stopped. When I turned to look, no one was there, just the empty laundry room, the humming machines, and that single washer in the corner, still shuddering with unnatural force. I told myself it was just another tenant who'd forgotten something upstairs. People came and went quickly in apartment buildings. There was nothing strange about it. I started my wash cycle and settled into one of the molded plastic chairs with my phone. The reception was poor in the basement, so I downloaded a book to read while waiting. 10 minutes passed before I heard the door again. The distinct squeak of hinges badly in need of oil again. Footsteps again. I looked up to see no one. The hair on the back of my neck rose. "Hello," I called. "Is someone there?" No answer, but the quality of the silence had changed. It felt expectant, as if the room itself was holding its breath. The washing machine in the corner suddenly stopped mid-cycle. The violent shuddering ceased, leaving an abrupt silence. Then, with a metallic groan, it started again, faster now, the drums spinning at a speed that couldn't be normal. The whole machine began to rock, inching away from the wall. I stood gathering my things. I'd come back for my laundry later, when the basement didn't feel so wrong. As I moved toward the door, the lights flickered. Once, twice, then darkness for a full 3 seconds before they sputtered back to life. In that brief darkness, I heard whispering, multiple voices, too low to make out words, coming from the corner, where the solitary washer continued its frenzied spinning. When the lights returned, I saw something that stopped me cold. The pile of clothes that had been waiting for the dryer was gone. In its place was a wet footprint on the concrete floor, a single, perfect impression of a bare foot, much larger than my own. I backed toward the exit, eyes fixed on that footprint. My shoulder blades hit the door, and I fumbled for the handle without turning around. Lock? That wasn't possible. The laundry room door never locked. It couldn't lock. It had no keyhole, no deadbolt, just a simple handle. Yet it wouldn't budge. The violent washing machine suddenly stopped again. The lid slowly raised with a hydraulic hiss, though no one was near it. Water sloshed over the side, dark water, not the soapy gray of normal wash water. It spread across the floor in a steady stream, making its way toward me. I abandoned the door and ran to the other side of the room, where a small window was set high in the wall, a window that opened into the alley, just big enough for a person to squeeze through if they could reach it. I dragged one of the plastic chairs across the floor, positioned it beneath the window, and climbed up. As I stretched to unlock the window, I heard a wet, slapping sound behind me, footsteps coming closer, the sound of something heavy and waterlogged moving across concrete. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that seeing what made that sound would be worse than anything my imagination could conjure. The window stuck at first, painted shut from decades of neglect. I pushed harder, using my panic for strength. Finally, it gave way with a crack of splintering paint, sliding upward. The wet footsteps were directly behind me now. Something cold and damp brushed against my ankle. I pulled myself through the window, scraping my back on the rough frame, tumbling onto the asphalt of the alley beyond. I lay there for a moment, gulping the night air, before scrambling to my feet. The window remained open above me. From within the basement came the sound of the washing machine starting again, that same violent shuddering but amplified now, accompanied by a rhythmic thumping like something soft and heavy being thrown repeatedly against metal. I ran back in my apartment, doors locked. I tried to calm my racing heart. Told myself there were logical explanations, a maintenance issue with the washer, a draft that moved the clothes, a stuck door that felt locked in my panic, but I knew they were lies. Just before dawn, when exhaustion finally overcame fear, I fell into a restless sleep. I dreamed of dark water rising, of things half-glimpsed moving beneath the surface of Spears just below the threshold of understanding. I woke to pounding on my door. The building manager, red-faced and angry, demanded an explanation for the state of the laundry room. Flooded, he said. Machines damaged, your clothes everywhere. He showed me photos on his phone. The laundry room with an inch of water covering the floor, and yes, my clothes scattered about. But not just on the floor, hanging from pipes on the ceiling, stuffed inside open dryers, arranged in a bizarre pattern across the top of the machines. I didn't do this, I said. I ran because there was someone else down there. He didn't believe me, neither did the police, when they came to question me about the vandalism. The overnight security footage showed only me entering the laundry room, no one else. It didn't show me leaving. A technical glitch caused the cameras to fail for 20 minutes during the exact time I claimed to have escaped. I paid for the damages to avoid legal trouble. Found a laundromat 10 blocks away rather than ever set foot in that basement again. For 3 weeks, things were almost normal. I convinced myself that stress and exhaustion had caused some kind of breakdown, that the locked door, the whispering, the wet footsteps, all of it had been in my head. Then my neighbor mentioned the new laundry room policy. No more late night washing, she said. Manager says nobody's allowed down there after 10 p.m. Now, why? I asked, though I already knew some people have been hearing things, voices, and a few people got locked in, the door just wouldn't open. Had to call maintenance to get out. My mouth went dry. Did they see anything? She hesitated. Margot in 3B said she saw clothes moving on their own, just rearranging themselves while she watched, and water on the floor, always water, even when no machines are running. That night I woke at exactly 1 a.m. to the sound of my bathroom faucet running full blast. When I went to check, dark water gurgled from the tap. Not the clear city water I was used to, but murky liquid that smelled of mildew and something else, something organic and decaying. I shut it off and called maintenance the next morning. They found nothing wrong, but it happened again the next night, and the next, always at 1 a.m. Men always stopping the moment I entered the bathroom. Then I started finding my clothes, the ones I'd abandoned in the laundry room that night, returning to me, a single sock in my dresser drawer that I knew wasn't there before. My favorite shirt hanging in the closet, still damp to the touch though I hadn't worn it in weeks, a pair of jeans folded neatly outside my apartment door when I left for work. All of them smelled faintly of mildew and that same organic decay I'd smelled in the water. Last night, I found my missing laundry basket in the center of my living room when I returned from work. A room I was certain had been empty when I left. Inside was a small puddle of dark water and something else, a single black button that didn't belong to any garment I owned. As I stared at it, my bathroom faucet turned on full blast, the sound of water drumming against porcelain. It was exactly 1 a.m. This time I didn't go to check. I sat frozen, watching the laundry basket, listening to the water run. From the bathroom came a new sound, wet footsteps crossing the tile floor, then the carpet of the hallway, crossing to the living room, coming closer. I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the wet slap of bare feet on floor, could see the carpet darken with moisture in the shape of footprints, coming toward me. Stopping just at the edge of the laundry basket, water began to rise inside the basket, dark water, welling from nowhere, bringing with it the smell of mildew and decay, and something worse, the smell of long, immersed flesh. I ran again, left everything behind and checked into a motel across town. In the morning, I gave notice to my landlord, told him I'd forfeit my security deposit but wouldn't be Turning to the apartment, he didn't argue, just asked if it was because of the basement thing. Apparently, 3 more tenants had reported similar experiences. The laundry room was now closed indefinitely. I'm leaving the city tomorrow, going somewhere inland, far from large bodies of water. But I'm not sure distance will be enough. Because last night in my motel room, I woke a tone, and to the sound of running water the bathroom faucet turned to full blast, and when I packed my suitcase this morning, I found a small puddle in the bottom, dark water, and a black button, identical to the one in my laundry basket. Whatever was in that basement has followed me. It's in the pipes, in the water system, maybe in all water everywhere. And I think it's still doing my laundry one garment at a time, waiting for me to come back for it. Do not answer the door. The note was slipped under my apartment door sometime during the day while I was at work, a plain white card with neat handwriting in blue ink. Do not answer your door after 1 p.m., regardless of who knocks, for your safety and ours. No signature, no explanation. I turned the card over looking for more information, but the back was blank. It seemed like an odd prank, or maybe a misguided building security measure. My apartment complex, the Westlake, was in a relatively safe neighborhood, though like any urban area, it had its share of late-night disturbances. I tossed the card onto my kitchen counter and forgot about it until that night, when a knock came at my door at 11:23 p.m. 3 sharp raps, evenly spaced. I was still up, binging a new series on Netflix, and my first instinct was to answer. Then I remembered the note. Who is it? I called from the couch. No response, just another set of 3 knocks, identical to the first. I muted the TV. I asked who it is. Silence. Then after a long pause, management, need to check your smoke detectors at 11:25 p.m. Unlikely. The building manager, Mrs. Cabrera, was meticulously professional and would never schedule maintenance so late. Come back tomorrow during office hours, I said firmly. Another pause. It's urgent. There's been a fire alarm malfunction. I hadn't heard any alarms. And if there was a genuine emergency, they would have announced it through the building's PAR system. I'm calling Mrs. Cabrera to confirm, I said, reaching for my phone. The response came immediately, the voice suddenly different, deeper, with an odd cadence that made the hairs on my neck stand up. No need for that. Open the door. Let me see you. A chill ran through me. The voice sounded nothing like anyone from the management office. I'm calling security, I said. Open the door. Each word was punctuated by a knock, harder now, making the door rattle in its frame. I backed away, phone in hand, and called the building's security desk. No answer. I tried Mrs. Cabrera's emergency line, straight to voicemail. The knocking stopped. I stood in the center of my living room, listening intently. Silence. Then the sound of something sliding under my door. Another white card. From where I stood, I could make out the same neat handwriting. I just want to talk. Let me in. My heart pounded as I retreated to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I called 911, reporting an attempted break. And the dispatcher assured me officers would arrive within 20 minutes due to higher priority calls in the area. I sat on my bed, eyes fixed on the bedroom door, waiting. The apartment had gone completely silent. Then my phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. I see you in there. Let me in. How had they gotten my number? Before I could process this, another chime. Look out your bedroom window. My bedroom was on the 7th floor, facing the street. There was no balcony, no fire escape, just a sheer drop to the pavement below. No one could be outside my window, yet I felt compelled to check. I approached cautiously, pulling back the curtain just enough to air out. The street below was empty except for parked cars. No police yet. I was about to let the curtain fall back when something moved at the edge of my vision, a shadow crossing the glass layer, and gone so quickly. I couldn't be sure it was real. My phone chimed again. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting. I jumped at a sudden sound. 3 knocks, but not from the front door. They came from my bedroom door, inside the apartment. Ice flooded my veins. Someone was inside. But how? I hadn't heard the front door open, hadn't heard anyone moving through the apartment. Who's there? My voice came out as a whisper. Let me see you. The voice was right outside my bedroom door now, no longer pretending to be maintenance staff. It had a strange quality, like multiple voices speaking in near unison, slightly out of sync. The police are on their way, I said, trying to sound confident. They won't see me. Only you can see me. I've chosen you. The doorknob turned slowly, testing the lock. I backed up until I hit the window, frantically searching for a weapon. There was nothing but a bedside lamp, which I unplugged and gripped by its base. The turning doorknob stopped. Silence again, then knocking from a different direction from the bathroom door that connected to my bedroom. 3 precise knocks. That door wasn't locked. It began to open slowly. I raised the lamp, ready to swing, but the door opened to reveal nothing, just my empty bathroom. My phone chimed in my hand, making me jump, look in the mirror. Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I took a step toward the bathroom. From where I stood, I could see a portion of the mirror above the sink. My reflection wasn't alone. Behind me stood a figure. Tall and thin, with proportions that seemed subtly wrong, like a human form that had been stretched. I couldn't make out its face. It seemed to shift and blur whenever I tried to focus on its features. I spun around. Nothing was there. But in the mirror, it remained standing behind me, now closer, its head inclined toward my neck as if breathing me in. I backed out of the bathroom, slammed the door, and wedged a chair under the handle. My phone chimed again. That won't keep me out. Nothing will. I've been invited. I never invited you. I typed back with shaking fingers. The response came immediately. Your neighbors did, as if on cue. I heard a scream from the apartment next door, a short, cut-off cry that ended as abruptly as it began. My phone chimed. They shouldn't have answered their door. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The police. Finally hear that. I said aloud, you should go now. No response. The sirens grew louder, then stopped. They had arrived at the building. My phone chimed one last time. I'll come back tomorrow night and the next. Until you answer. That's how this works. I deleted the message, then nearly dropped the phone when an incoming call from an unknown number lit up the screen. I rejected it instantly. Minutes later, there was a new knock at my front door, different this time, authoritative and accompanied by a voice identifying the visitors as police officers. I checked through the peephole before opening the door to 2 uniformed officers. They took my statement, checked the apartment, and found nothing unusual. No signs of forced entry. No evidence anyone had been inside. Your front door was locked from the inside when we arrived, one officer noted, and you say you didn't hear anyone enter or leave. I nodded, knowing how it sounded. They suggested stress or an overactive imagination might be to blame, mentioned that no other residents had reported disturbances. Suggested I get some sleep after they left. I found another white card on my kitchen counter, one that hadn't been there before, one the police somehow hadn't noticed. Tomorrow night. 11 p.m. I'll knock 3 times. I didn't sleep. As dawn broke, I packed a bag and checked into a hotel across town, called in sick to work, and together after a while. Same beige walls, same abstract artwork, same tiny shampoo bottles lined up on the bathroom counter. The Bellwood Hotel in downtown C was unremarkable in every way. A standard business class establishment, clean, efficient, forgettable. I checked in late on a Tuesday, exhausted after a delayed flight and a presentation that had gone poorly. All I wanted was a hot shower and a bed that wasn't an airplane seat. Room 714 was at the end of a long corridor on the 7th floor, a corner room, which I preferred for the extra window and relative quiet. I swiped my keycard, pushed open the door, and dropped my luggage with a sigh of relief. The room was exactly what I expected. King bed, Desk by the window, flat screen, TV mounted on the wall. I showered, ordered room service, and fell asleep watching cable news with the volume low. I woke at 3:17 a.m. without knowing why. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the alarm clock and slivers of city lights seeping through the curtains. As I oriented myself, my gaze fell on something that hadn't been there when I'd fallen asleep. A door in the wall opposite the bed. Not the entrance door, nor the bathroom door, a third door where there had only been a blank wall hours before. I sat up, heart suddenly racing. The door was simple white with a brushed nickel handle, perfectly ordinary except for its impossible existence. I'd walked past that wall earlier. I'd looked at the generic watercolor landscape hanging there. My first thought was that I was still dreaming or experiencing some stress-induced hallucination. I closed my eyes, counted to 10, and looked again. The door remained. I reached for the bedside lamp, flooding the room with warm light. No hallucination. The door was solid and real, complete with hinges and a keyhole beneath the handle. The wall around it showed no signs of recent construction. It looked as though the door had always been there. I got out of bed and approached cautiously. Logic insisted there must be an explanation. Perhaps it was a connecting room door I'd somehow failed to notice earlier, but I'd stayed in hundreds of hotel rooms. I always checked for connecting doors and requested rooms without them, when possible. Standing before it now, I could feel cool air seeping from beneath the door, much cooler than the carefully regulated temperature of my room. I placed my palm against the white wood. It felt solid, real, and unnaturally cold. I tried the handle. Locked. I leaned closer, putting my eye to the keyhole. Nothing but darkness beyond. A part of me wanted to call the front desk immediately to demand an explanation or a room change, but it was after 3 a.m, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I might sound insane. Hello, there's an extra door in my room that wasn't there before. How would that conversation go? Instead, I wedged a chair under the handle, switched on every light in the room, and sat on the bed watching the door until sunrise, when exhaustion finally overcame my fear. I woke to my alarm at 7 a.m. Sunlight streamed through the curtains. I'd forgotten to close properly. I looked immediately to the opposite wall. The door was gone. The watercolor landscape hung in its place, exactly as it had when I'd first entered the room. I approached the wall with caution, running my hands over the smooth surface where the door had been. Nothing. No seam, no outline, no evidence that anything unusual had ever been there. Had I dreamed it? Had I dreamed it? Was I losing my mind? I had meetings all day, but found myself distracted, questioning my sanity. By evening, I'd convinced myself it had been some combination of exhaustion and stress, a waking dream, nothing more. When I returned to my room that night, everything appeared normal. I ordered room service again, worked on my laptop for a few hours, and did a thorough check of the walls before turning in. No mysterious doors, just ordinary hotel room walls. I slept soundly until something woke me at exactly 3:17 a.m. The door had returned. This time it was slightly ajar. I lay frozen in bed, staring at the thin line of darkness visible in the crack between door and frame. As my eyes adjusted to the dimness, I noticed a faint bluish light emanating from that darkness, not electric light, but something colder, more diffuse. "Hello," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The door opened another inch in response. Fear kept me paralyzed for several long moments, then curiosity, that fatal human trait, propelled me from the bed. I approached the door slowly, every instinct screaming at me to run in the opposite direction. Through the widening gap, I could make out not a room, but what appeared to be a corridor, long and straight, with that same blue-tinged darkness, making it just barely visible. The walls were different from the hotel's older, with peeling wallpaper in a faded pattern I couldn't quite discern. I reached for my phone, using its flashlight to illuminate the impossible space. The corridor extended far beyond what the physical dimensions of the hotel should allow, vanishing into darkness despite the powerful beam. The floor was hardwood, warped with age and stained in places with something dark. The walls were covered in Victorian-style wallpaper, once ornate but now hanging in strips from water damage, and there were other doors along the corridor. Dozens of them, identical white doors with tarnished brass numbers. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "Is anyone there?" A sound echoed back, footsteps, slow and deliberate, coming from somewhere deep in the corridor, growing closer. I backed away, ready to slam the door shut, when something caught my eye, a small figure standing in the corridor, perhaps 30 feet away. A child, motionless, head bowed. "Are you okay?" I asked, concern momentarily overriding my fear. "Are you lost?" The child raised its head. Even from that distance, in that blue half-light, I could see that something was terribly wrong with its face. The proportions were off, the features blurred and indistinct, as if I was viewing them through warped glass. It took a step toward me, then another. I slammed the door shut, turned the lock, and wedged the chair under the handle again for good measure. My heart pounded as I backed away, eyes fixed on the door. Something scratched at it from the other side, light at first, then more insistent. The handle jiggled, the door shuddered against its frame. "Go away," I shouted, hoping my voice didn't betray my terror. The scratching stopped. Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Then a voice, high and sweet, but with an underlying wrongness that made my skin crawl. "Let me in, I'm lost. I need to get back. Back where I asked before I could stop myself. Home, my room. They've been renovated so many times, the doors move." "We get lost between the walls." Another voice joined the first, an adult this time, male, with the same underlined distortion. "Let us through. We just want to find our way back." More voices chimed in, a chorus of pleas from behind the door. The handle rattled more violently. I retreated to the far corner of the room, phone in hand, ready to call security. But who would believe me? What would I even say? The voices grew louder, more desperate. The door began to bulge inward, as if tremendous pressure was being applied from the other side. The chair creaked against the strain. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, everything stopped. Silence fell. The door returned to normal. A moment later, my phone rang, making me jump. The screen showed front desk. I answered with a shaking hand. Mr. Walker, the night manager's voice, was professionally pleasant. "I'm sorry to disturb you, but we've had noise complaints from the guests on either side of your room." Voices, they said. A heated argument. I started, then changed course. I was on a phone call, international client. "I apologize for the disturbance." "No problem, sir. Just please keep it down for the remainder of the night." After hanging up, I stared at the door. Still there, still closed, the chair still wedged under the handle. The guests on either side had heard voices from my room. Multiple voices, but the only voice that should have been audible was mine. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat in the corner, watching the door, listening for any sound from beyond it. None came. At precisely 6:42 a.m., as the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, the door simply vanished, fading like a projection being switched off, leaving the blank wall and watercolor landscape in its place. I checked out immediately, making up an excuse about a family emergency. The front desk clerk processed my early departure without comment, though I noticed her giving me an odd look, perhaps noting my disheveled appearance, the dark circles under my eyes. As I waited for the elevator, an elderly maintenance man emerged from a service door nearby. He gave me a curious glance, then did a double take. "Room 714, he asked, his voice low. I nodded, surprised. "Did it come for you too?" he asked. Before I could respond, he continued, "They built this place on top of the old Parkview Hotel. Didn't tear it down properly, just built right over parts of it. Some of the old rooms, they're still there, caught between the walls, between the floors." "What are you talking about?" I asked, though I already knew. "The doors that appear at night, the people trapped behind them." He adjusted his cap nervously. "They were guests who never checked out. Victims of the fire in '63, they're confused, think they're still alive, still staying here. They see our renovations, the new walls that block their rooms, and they try to find their way back." The elevator arrived with a cheerful ding. I stepped in, holding the door as the maintenance man continued. I've worked here 40 years, seen the doors many times. They don't show themselves to everyone, only to the ones they think might let them through. His eyes met mine, serious and sad. Don't ever open those doors all the way. What comes through won't be what you saw, won't be human anymore. Not really. The elevator doors tried to close. I pushed the button to hold them. Why are you telling me this? He glanced around, then lowered his voice further. Because you're not safe now, they've seen you, marked you. Those doors, they can appear anywhere once they know your face, your home, other hotels, anywhere with enough space between the walls. I let the elevator doors close, my blood running cold. He was right. In the 3 weeks since that night, I've encountered the door twice more, once in my apartment, once in another hotel room in a different city, always appearing at 3:17 a.m., always accompanied by voices begging to be let through. I don't know how long. I can keep refusing them. The door appears in different places each time, but it's finding me more frequently now. Last night, I dozed off on my couch and woke to find it had replaced my front door entirely. No way out except through that dark corridor where they wait. I barricaded myself in the bathroom until morning, when the door returned to normal. But I know it's just a temporary solution. Tonight, I'm staying at a friend's house, hoping the door can't find me here, but I've started to notice the walls in unfamiliar rooms now, the spaces that seem just slightly off in their dimensions, the areas where the wallpaper or paint doesn't quite match. The spaces between where they wait for someone to open the wrong door at the wrong time. I check my watch, it's 3:16, empty subway car. Living in New York means developing an instinct for the subway system, not just the routes and transfers, but the unwritten social codes that govern commuter behavior. Stand right, walk left on escalators, let people exit before boarding, and never ever get on an empty subway car when all the others are packed. There's always a reason. An empty car stays empty. Usually the overwhelming stench of human waste or a malfunctioning air conditioner that's turned the space into a rolling sauna. The first time you make the rookie mistake of boarding an empty car, you learn the lesson quickly. Which is why I hesitated that night in late October, standing on the platform at 86th Street as the one train pulled in. It was just after midnight, and I was heading downtown after a friend's birthday dinner that had run late. The train wasn't crowded late enough that the rush had passed, but nearly every car held a decent number of passengers, except for the second to last car, completely empty. I paused, subway survival instincts kicking in. No obvious reason presented itself, no homeless person sprawled across the seats, no visible puddles of bodily fluids, no oppressive heat radiating through the windows. Just an empty car, brightly lit and inviting. The doors slid open. A businessman hurrying past me slowed, peered into the empty car, then shook his head and continued to the next one. A teenager did the same. Their reactions confirmed my instinct something was wrong with that car. But what? Curiosity overrode caution. I stepped in just as the doors were closing. My first impression was the cold. While October nights in New York could be chilly, the subway cars are typically overheated if anything. This car was freezing, my breath clouded in front of me, and I immediately regretted not wearing a heavier jacket. My second impression was the silence. Subway cars are never truly quiet. They rattle and screech, the wheels grind against the tracks, the automated announcements periodically interrupt the journey, but this car seemed to absorb sound, as if the air itself was dampening the normal subway cacophony. I sat down, placing my bag on the seat beside me. The train pulled away from the station, and I noticed my third oddity. The movement felt smoother than usual, lacking the jerky acceleration typical of the aging subway system. As we entered the tunnel, the lights flickered briefly. When they stabilized, I realized I wasn't alone anymore. A woman sat at the far end of the car, an elderly lady with steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a dark coat that looked several decades out of fashion. She hadn't entered at my station. I was certain the car had been empty when I boarded. Perhaps I'd overlooked her somehow. Easy enough to miss a single passenger in the corner of a subway car. When hurrying to board, the woman stared straight ahead, unmoving, her profile sharp and rigid. Something about her stillness made me uneasy. I pulled out my phone both as distraction and subtle shield, but found no signal. Not unusual in the subway tunnels. We passed the 79th Street station without stopping, an express train during late hours, making limited stops on its way downtown. Through the windows, I caught glimpses of waiting passengers, none of whom gave our car a second glance as the train rushed past. When I looked back from the window, a man in a business suit had appeared in the middle of the car. Like the woman, he sat perfectly still, facing forward, briefcase balanced on his knees. His clothing style seemed oddly dated, a wide lapelled suit that might have been fashionable in the 1970s. I hadn't heard him enter, hadn't felt the train stop. Unease blossomed into genuine alarm. I stood, moving toward the doors that connected to the next car. As I passed the businessman, I noticed his hands grayish-white, with pronounced blue veins that didn't quite look right under the fluorescent lighting. He didn't acknowledge me. When I reached the end of the car and peered through the small window into the adjacent car, I saw normal commuters, a couple laughing together. A woman reading, a man nodding off. Relief flooded through me. I tried the door. It wouldn't open. I pushed harder, then tried pulling. Nothing. The door was either locked or jammed. When I turned back around, the car had 4 more passengers, all sitting with the same unnatural stillness, all wearing clothes from different decades. A teenager with a 1990s grunge look, a woman in a 1960s mini dress, an older man in what appeared to be 1950s workwear, a young professional whose power suit screamed 1980s. None of them looked at me, none of them moved or spoke or shifted in their seats. They all stared forward, expressions blank. I returned to my seat, heart racing. The next stop would be 42nd Street, a major station where I could exit and switch to a different train, a different car, anything to get away from these strange silent passengers. The train slowed as we approached the station. Through the windows, I could see the familiar platform coming into view. The brakes squealed as we came to a stop. The doors didn't open. On the platform, people waited for other cars to empty, but no one approached ours. No one seemed to notice it at all, as if our car was invisible to those outside. I pounded on the doors. Hey, the doors aren't opening. No one on the platform reacted. The passengers in my car remained motionless. The train started moving again, pulling away from the station. I fell back into my seat, genuine panic setting in as we accelerated into the tunnel. The lights flickered more violently. In those brief moments of darkness, I heard movement, the rustle of clothing, the creak of seats, footsteps on the floor. When the lights stabilized, the car was full, every seat taken, every pole grasped by a silent passenger. Dozens of people from different eras, all perfectly still, all facing forward. None of them had entered at the station. They had simply appeared, and now, for the first time, one of them looked at me. The woman who had been there first, the elderly lady in the amputated coat, turned her head slowly, mechanically, until her eyes met mine. Her face was gaunt, her skin pallid with a bluish undertone, her eyes milky and unfocused. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound emerged. Instead, a trickle of dark liquid ran from the corner of her lips, down her chin, dripping onto her coat. One by one, the others began to turn toward me as well, movements stiff and unnatural, faces bearing the same unhealthy pallor, the same dark liquid seeping from mouths, noses, ears. The teenager sitting nearest to me reached out a hand. His fingernails were black, his skin ice cold as it brushed against my arm. I bolted to my feet, stumbling toward the front of the car, looking desperately for the emergency intercom. The lights flickered again, longer this time, and in the darkness I felt cold hands grabbing at my clothes, my hair, my skin. When the lights returned, I was surrounded. They had left their seats and now stood in a circle around me, still silent, still expressionless except for their gaping mouths, dark liquid now flowing freely down their chins, staining their clothes. The train began to slow again, though I could see no station through the windows, only darkness. The brakes screeched at a higher pitch than normal, the sound almost human in its distress. We came to a stop in what appeared to be an abandoned station platform, crumbling concrete, faded and peeling tiles, no lights except what spilled from our car. Unfamiliar symbols were painted on the walls in what looked disturbingly like the same dark liquid, dripping from the passengers' orifices. The doors slid open. The silent crowd parted, creating a path to the exit. The elderly woman gestured toward the platform, her movement jerky and disjointed. Outside, in the darkness of the abandoned station, shapes moved, more people, or things that had once been people, waiting on the platform. I caught glimpses of their faces as they shifted in the dim light, hollow eyes, gaping mouths, skin with that same unhealthy blue-gray cast. The message was clear. They wanted me to join them. I backed away until I hit the opposite doors. "What is this place? What do you want from me?" The businessman nearest to me tilted his head at an impossible angle, neck bent too far to be natural. When he spoke, his voice was like gravel being crushed, barely recognizable as human to last. "Stop, everyone out. This isn't a real station," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This isn't on the map." The elderly woman spoke next, her voice a wet gurgling sound. "Ghost. Line for ghost. Passengers." Understanding dawned with horrible clarity. I looked more carefully at their faces, these passengers from different decades. The businessman had a deep gash across his forehead. The teenager's neck was bent at a sickening angle. The woman in the mini-dress had a chest that appeared crushed. "You died on the subway," I whispered. The elderly woman's mouth stretched into what might have been intended as a smile. "Long ago, different accidents, different years. Same car always, this car we wait," said the businessman. "We ride." "We collect," said the teenager. As one they moved toward me again, hands outstretched. That dark, liquid blood, I now realized blackened with age and death, dripping from their mouths and gathering on the floor of the car. The lights flickered again. In the momentary darkness, I felt their cold hands on me, pulling me toward the doors, toward the abandoned platform where the others waited. In desperation, I broke away, lunging for the emergency brake lever near the operator's cabin. I pulled it with all my strength. The train shuddered violently. The lights went out completely. The sounds of metal grinding against metal filled the car, deafening in its intensity. I was thrown to the floor by the sudden deceleration, then silenced darkness, the feeling of cold, dead hands retreating from my body. When the lights came back on, I was alone in the car. Normal sounds returned, the rattle of the train announcements overhead. Outside the windows was the familiar sight of the 23rd Street station platform, populated by ordinary late-night commuters. The doors opened. I ran out, drawing curious stares from people waiting to board. "Hey, you okay?" asked a transit worker who noticed my distress. "That car," I gasped, pointing back at where I'd been. "There were people, dead people." He cut me off with a confused look. "What car? That's just an equipment gap." I turned back. Where the second, two lost car should have been was nothing, a dark empty space between two normal subway cars, just wide enough for maintenance access. The position where I had been riding, where the ghost car had been, didn't exist. I haven't taken the subway since that night. I'd bring myself to descend those stairs into the underground, to hear the screech of approaching trains, but sometimes in dreams I find myself back in that car, surrounded by the silent passengers with their black blood and cold hands. In the dreams, I don't escape. In the dreams, I join them at the last stop on that abandoned platform that doesn't exist on any map. And sometimes when I pass subway entrances on my daily walks, I glimpse familiar faces watching me from the shadows. The elderly woman, the businessman, the teenager, waiting, reminding me that they're still riding, still collecting, still saving a seat for me. The mall directory that changes. I took the night security job at Westbrook Mall because it paid better than retail and required minimal interaction with people. Patrol the empty corridors after closing, check for unlocked doors, watch for break-ins, file reports. Simple, solitary work that suited my introverted nature. The mall itself was fairly unremarkable. 3 levels of standard retail space arranged around a central atrium, anchored by department stores at either end. Built in the late 1980s, it had the dated charm of that era. Skylights, abundant fake plants, and tiled floors that echoed with every footstep. During my first week, I familiarized myself with the layout, the service corridors, the emergency exits, standard procedure for new CERS. Security staff. I studied the mall directory, one of those oversized backlit displays near the main entrance that showed the layout of all 3 floors, with color-coded zones and a "You Are Here" marker. By the second week, I had the entire mall memorized and settled into my routine. Clock in at 10 p.m. Just after closing, make hourly rounds through all levels. Monitor security cameras from the office between rounds. Clock out at 6 a.m. when the morning staff arrived. It was during my third week, during a 2 patrol of the upper level, that I first noticed something odd about the mall directory near the east escalators. I'd passed it dozens of times before, but that night something caught my eye. A store name I didn't recognize, Tempus Antiquities. I paused, frowning at the directory. According to the map, this store was located on the 3rd floor, in a corner space that I knew for certain housed a vacant storefront being renovated for a future tenant. I figured it was an error. Perhaps the directory had been updated prematurely for a store that hadn't opened yet. I made a note to mention it to my supervisor and continued my rounds. When I reached the 3rd floor, curiosity drove me to check the vacant space. As expected, it was empty, just bare walls behind construction barriers, plastic sheets covering the entrance, and a sign announcing "Coming soon, Cellularize, a phone repair chain." No sign of anything called Tempus Antiquities. On my next round, at 3 a.m., I checked the directory again. Tempus Antiquities was gone, the vacant space correctly labeled as "Coming soon," but now there was a different anomaly, a store called Memories in Thread, listed on the 2nd floor, where I knew there was a chain sportswear outlet. I immediately went to the 2nd floor to check. The sportswear store was exactly where it should be, its darkened interior visible through the security gates. Over the next few nights, I began paying special attention to the mall directories. During daylight hours and evening shifts, they displayed the correct store information, but after midnight, discrepancies appeared. Stores listed that didn't exist, locations that didn't match reality. The changes were subtle at first, just 1 or 2 differences per night. But as weeks passed, the midnight alterations became more pronounced. Entire sections of the mall were differently labeled after hours, showing layouts that didn't correspond to the actual physical space. I started taking photos of the directories with my phone, comparing the day and night versions. In the midnight versions, the architectural layout itself began to change. Corridors that didn't exist, extensions to wings that physically couldn't be there, even a 4th level that the mall definitely didn't have. More disturbing were the store names that appeared in these phantom spaces: Lost and Found Memories, Tempus Fugit Travel, Yesteryear's Children, The Final Page, Echoes of Home, all with odd time, related or nostalgic themes. I debated whether to report these findings. How would I explain it? The mall directory show imaginary stores at night sounded like the beginning of a mental health episode, not a legitimate security concern. Instead, I began investigating on my own. I researched the mall's history, looking for clues about previous construction plans or abandoned expansions that might explain the phantom layouts. What I found was more disturbing than I'd anticipated. Westbrook Mall had been built on the site of a previous shopping center, Westbrook Plaza, which burned down in 1986. The fire had started in the middle of the night, when the building should have been empty. Yet 17 bodies were recovered from the ashes, shoppers and employees who shouldn't have been there after closing. The investigation concluded that a private event had been taking place after hours, though no such event had been officially scheduled. The victims were never fully identified. The fire had burned. Age. hot enough to destroy most identifying features and records. The new mall had been built directly over the original foundation, incorporating parts of the surviving structure. The locations where the bodies had been found corresponded almost exactly with the phantom stores appearing on the midnight directories. Armed with this knowledge, I decided to conduct an experiment. On my next shift, at exactly midnight, I positioned myself in front of the main directory and watched the change happen between one blink and the next. One moment the directory showed the familiar layout of the existing mall, the next it displayed the altered version with its phantom stores and impossible architecture. But now I noticed something else, tiny dots scattered throughout the phantom sections. 17 dots glowing faintly red against the backlit map. They hadn't appeared in my photos, somehow only visible to the naked eye. I touched one of the dots on the directory. The "You Are Here" marker moved, not to where my finger was, but to one of the phantom stores, echoes of home. A sudden chill ran through me as I realized the dots weren't part of the map's design. They were markers, people, 17 of them, moving through the phantom spaces. Over the next several nights, I tracked these dots, noting their movements. They followed patterns, repeating the same routes night after night, as if trapped in a loop. Occasionally, one would remain stationary for hours, then suddenly zip across the map to a new location. I began to feel I was being watched during my rounds. The sensation was strongest near the areas where the phantom stores supposedly existed: empty corners, maintenance hallways, vacant spaces between existing shops. Cold spots appeared where no draft should be. Security cameras in certain areas showed brief static or distortion at predictable times. Then came the night I heard the music. It was during my 3 round as I passed the vacant space on the third floor, the one sometimes labeled as Temper's Antiquities. From behind the construction barriers came the faint sound of music, not modern pop that might be playing on a worker's radio, but something older. Big band music, like from the 1940s, crackling as if played on a vintage record player. I approached the barrier, listening. The music grew louder, accompanied now by the murmur of voices, laughter, the clink of glasses. It sounded like a party in full swing. I radioed my supervisor, who was monitoring cameras from the security office. "Hey Mike, are you seeing anyone in that vacant space on 3, the one being renovated?" His response was immediate: "Negative, just checked the feed. It's empty and dark. Can you check again? I'm hearing music and voices." A pause, then nothing showing up on camera. "You want me to come up?" "No," I said quickly, suddenly reluctant to have anyone else witness whatever was happening. "Probably just sound carrying from somewhere else. I'll check it out." I peered through a gap in the plastic sheeting covering the entrance. The interior should have been empty, stripped down to concrete floors and bare walls. Instead, I saw a fully furnished antique shop. Display cases filled with watches and clocks, shelves lined with vintage items, walls adorned with old photographs. The space appeared much larger than physically possible, extending far beyond where the exterior wall of the mall should be. People browsed the merchandise, men in suits and fedoras, women in dresses with padded shoulders and seamed stockings, all in the styles of the 1940s. Their forms were slightly transparent, with a grainy quality like old film footage. At the center of the shop, a man in a waistcoat wound an ornate grandfather clock. He looked up suddenly, directly at me, his eyes meeting mine through the gap in the sheeting. Unlike the others, he appeared solid, his gaze sharp and aware. He smiled, not a warm expression, but knowing, almost predatory. Then he raised his finger too high, his lips in a shushing gesture, and pointed to the face of the grandfather clock. The hand showed 3:17. At that moment, my radio crackled. "Everything okay up there?" You went silent. The sound broke the strange spell. I blinked, and the scene vanished, replaced by the reality of bare walls and construction materials, illuminated only by the beam of my flashlight. "Yeah, I managed to respond. False alarm." I backed away from the vacant space, heart racing. When I checked the time on my phone, it read 3:17, a me. M. The next day, I requested to be moved to the day shift, claiming night hours were affecting my health. Request denied. They needed experienced staff on nights. That evening, before my shift, I visited every mall directory, scrutinizing them, while they still showed the correct layout. On a hunch, I checked the building history displayed in a small section of each directory, the mall milestones that listed key dates in Westbrook's development. What I found chilled me. According to the daytime directories, the original Westbrook Plaza had burned down on October the 17th, TT6. My shift that night would be October the 17th, 2023, exactly 37 years later. When I arrived for work, there was a tension in the air, a heaviness I couldn't explain. The usual closing procedures seemed to take longer than normal, the last employees lingering, as if reluctant to leave. By midnight, I was alone in the mall. The directories had already changed, displaying their phantom layout with those 17 glowing dots, except now, the dots were brighter, pulsing slightly, and they were all converging toward the vacant space on the third floor. I decided to avoid that area entirely during my rounds. Instead, I remained in the security office, monitoring the cameras at 3. The feed from the third floor began to distort. Static overtook the screens one by one until only a single monitor remained clear, the one showing the vacant space. I watched in horrified fascination as the plastic sheeting over the entrance rippled. Though there was no draft in the closed mall, it bulged outward, as if someone or something was pushing against it from the inside. The radio on my belt crackled to life, though I hadn't activated it. Through bursts of static came a voice, cultured male, with an old-fashioned accent. Join us. The store is open now. Special items for special customers. The plastic sheeting tore open on the camera feed, but instead of seeing the empty construction space, the monitor showed a doorway filled with golden light. Silhouettes moved within that light, approaching the opening. The radio crackled again. 37 years is long enough to wait. Don't you think? We need new customers, new souls for the collection. I switched off the monitor, grabbed my keys, and ran for the exit. As I passed the main directory in the Tatrium, I saw that the layout had changed again, now showing only Tempest Antiquities occupying the entire mall, all 3 floors. The 17 red dots had been joined by an 18th blinking rapidly at the security office, where I'd just been. I made it to my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely insert the key. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I looked back at the mall. Through the glass doors of the main entrance, I'd see light streaming down the escalators from the 3rd floor, golden light that shouldn't have been there in the darkened building. I never returned to Westbrook Mall. Sent my resignation by email the next day. Found a new job across town, day shift only. 2 weeks later, the local news reported a strange accident at the mall. Overnight, the entire 3rd floor vacant space had collapsed into the stores below, killing one person, the night security guard who had replaced me. The cause was listed as structural failure, possibly related to the renovations. The victim's body was never recovered from the debris. I still avoid shopping malls now, especially after dark, but sometimes I receive mail with no an address, elegant envelopes containing vintage postcards featuring Westbrook Plaza as it looked in the 1940s, before it became Westbrook Mall, before the fire. On the back of each postcard in elegant script are the words, "We're still waiting for you to complete your shift." The directory shows exactly where you belong. The most recent card arrived yesterday. It shows the interior of an antique shop filled with clocks. In the background, barely visible among the customers, is the night security guard who replaced me, and circled in red ink, a spot behind the counter, marked with my name.